Hi, welcome back to the Semi Plus. Today we are talking about the Chips and Science Act and why it has become one of the most consequential industrial policy decisions in modern American history. But before we get into it, let's zoom out and understand why it exists at all, because the story behind it is very interesting. The United States didn't just help invent the semiconductor industry, it dominated semiconductor manufacturing for decades. In 1990, the United States accounted for around 37% of the world's semiconductor manufacturing capacity. By 2022, that number had fallen to around 10%. So, what happened? It wasn't one event, it was a slow, decades long shift driven by lower operating costs overseas, foreign government incentives, and American companies increasingly focusing on chip design while outsourcing the actual fabrication. The result was a situation where the country that pioneered much of the technology became highly dependent on overseas manufacturing, especially for advanced chips. Many of those advanced chips are produced in a small number of facilities located thousands of miles away. Then came 2020 and the COVID 19 pandemic happened. It didn't just disrupt daily life, it exposed weaknesses in global supply chains that most people never noticed. Factories slowed down, demand for electronics surged, and suddenly a shortage of tiny silicon chips delayed the production of cars, appliances, medical devices, and many other products. Here's a detail that doesn't get enough attention. A modern vehicle can contain thousands of semiconductor chips, and if one critical chip is unavailable, production can stop entirely. Automakers were forced to park unfinished vehicles in massive lots, waiting for components that cost only a few dollars but couldn't be sourced anywhere else. That was the moment many governments and industries realized something important. Semiconductors are not ordinary commodities, they are foundational technology. Signed into law in August 2022, the CHIPS and Science Act provides approximately $52.7 billion in federal funding for semiconductor manufacturing, research, and workforce development. The law also includes a 25% investment tax credit for certain semiconductor manufacturing investments that are made in the United States. For the total 52.7 billion, 39 billion supports semiconductor manufacturing incentives, 11 billion supports research and development programs, and the remaining funding supports workforce development, education, and related initiatives. But there is another important feature that receives less attention. This law includes strict guide rails. For example, companies receiving certain CHIPS funding face restriction on significantly expanding advanced semiconductor manufacturing in countries of concern for a period of almost 10 years. Now let's talk about what has happened since the law was passed. The results have been significant. Since the push began, semiconductor ecosystem companies have announced an unprecedented wave of private capital across the United States. Those investments span more than 100 projects across 28 states and represent hundreds of billions of dollars in announced private investment. Annual semiconductor manufacturing investment levels have risen dramatically compared to pre-pandemic levels, and the ambition is enormous. The US is projected to triple its semiconductor manufacturing capacity over the next decade. It represents the fastest projected growth rate of any region in the world. For leading edge semiconductor production, the growth could be even more significant. These investments are also happening expand advanced packaging, research facilities, and workforce training programs throughout the country. But here's the catch. Building semiconductor manufacturing capacity is not easy. A modern leading edge fab can cost more than 20 billion to build. Construction can take years, and manufacturing the first chip is only the beginning. Operating a fab requires an enormous amount of highly specialized knowledge because a semiconductor fab is not a traditional factory. It is an ultra clean environment where some manufacturing features are measured in nanometers, where even a small single microscopic dust particle can damage circuits and ruin an entire chip. The expertise required to operate these facilities at high yield level often takes years to develop, meaning the industry faces a massive uphill battle to train enough skilled workers, which is happening right now. There is also a structural cost challenge. Building and operating fab in the United States is generally more expensive than in several major semiconductor manufacturing regions in Asia. The CHIPS Act helps offset some of that cost, but it doesn't eliminate it. The CHIPS Act is not just industrial policy, it is also national security strategy. Think about what modern defense systems depend on: fighter aircraft, missile guidance system, satellite communication, cybersecurity infrastructure, and artificial intelligence. If a major disruption were to affect those facilities, whether through natural disaster or geopolitical tension or any other outright conflict, replacing that manufacturing capacity quickly would be nearly impossible. That concern have motivated governments around the world to invest heavily in domestic semiconductor capabilities. The United States is not alone. Europe, Japan, India, and South Korea and others are also pursuing similar strategies. So, in summary, the CHIPS Act is an attempt to reverse decades of manufacturing decline and strengthen the semiconductor ecosystem in the United States. It has already influenced investment decisions and reshaped manufacturing plans and accelerated workforce development efforts. Thanks for watching. This leaves us with one major question. Is this new industry shift a massive game changer, or it is just overhyped marketing? Drop your take in the comments right now. I want to see what you guys think. If you enjoyed this content and want to help support the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you in next video on the Semi Plus.